Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom Podcast. I'm really excited about today's guest, John Foster, and he's got a really interesting concept around teaching kids around financial literacy. As you know, our school system, it does its job for a particular purpose, but we have to learn different things outside of the school system, including finances, financial literacy. So he's here to talk about that. He's got an amazing background, and I'll introduce him to the show. John, welcome.
Hey, hi, Chris. Thanks very much. It's great to be here.
Yeah, like I said, you have an interesting work, very important work. Tell the audience about yourself and how you got started.
Today my company, Middle School MBA, we're revolutionizing the way business and economics is taught, younger, faster, and better than ever. I got into this, I had a long career in industry. My background is engineering and management. And so I worked through plants and startups and M&A and all that sort of stuff, corporate strategy. And along the way, I volunteered for Junior Achievement. It's a very old charity that teaches business to kids. And I kept adding stuff to the curriculum as things went on. And one day I just had my own curriculum. So I was teaching that in schools and everybody loved it. And one day I was walking to class and I said to myself, why am I teaching 14 kids? I should be teaching 14,000. And so that's when I built all the tools that I always wanted to teach with and put it online and kind of crafted it into a curriculum that any teacher can use. So we're able to drop in, and we do drop into any school in the world essentially overnight and bring extremely high level business, economics, and entrepreneurship to kids as young as 10 or 11 years old.
That's amazing. And so this question, one question is, because we have Khan Academy and there's, I've actually had the Tuttle Twins.
Yes, Connor Boyack.
Yeah, Connor Boyack. And
Connor's a great guy.
Yeah, talking about, the libertarian approach, homeschooling. It does, like I said, the modern school system has its merits and achieves its purpose for a certain achieves an outcome for a certain purpose, but as you know, it doesn't prepare for things outside of that scope. So, talk about your how this incorporates. Is it extra? Can it replace the school system? All of that.
Yes, well, we do summer camps in school, after school, and we're in private schools, charter schools, home schools. So what we've done is our revolutionary turn is to make it super simple. And the funny thing is, we've actually gone back to the way to the concepts that people used prior to, say, the 1910 or 1920. Keynesianism came into the fore, and economics started to become mathematized to such an extent that it was separated away from business. It's really its origins. When Aristotle first looked around and said, "Hey, what's going on with this commercial stuff? People are making things and selling them and selling their time and paying wages and exchanging money and charging interest on money." He's like, "What the heck's going on here?" And this is over 2,000 years ago. He got a lot of things right. The focus was, how does this commercial world work? What are the principles? What are its nature? And that's where economics went, for 2,000 years, and then some, slowly finding its way to the real principles that describe free markets. And then it took a very bad turn in the early 1900s and became very, very mathematical and very disconnected. And so now everybody hates it, and they think it doesn't apply to anything. It's very removed from reality. And we're bringing all that back. We start with business concepts, and we have We have a 3D model, which shows the economy as being a big network of businesses hooked together, transforming natural resources into products. That's what actually happens. This product allows you to literally trace things around with your finger to understand what's happening with money flows and product flows and all that sort of thing. And so in taking that view, we can zoom into the model and say, okay, this is a business. How does it operate? What is its P&L, et cetera, et cetera. And then we zoom back out and we have everything in context. And so that's sort of the backbone of the course. We're able to, if we want to talk about prices, we zoom in on prices in the model, and then we talk about really, really deep things like what is a price and where does it come from, and why is money on one side of the equation? And by the way, what is money? And where does money come from? What are its properties? How do we recognize it from something else? And again, we're doing this with kids 11, 12, 13 years old. So it's really, really exciting to be able to bring those concepts. And their teachers and their parents, they come back and say, oh my God, I always wanted to understand all of this. I'm so happy to see this happening.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's great to see the work that, for example, Kip and most of my learnings about what money is was, after the, 2000 and 2008, digital assets and, these banking crises, I've learned how the money system works and, how the banking system is not served for you, it's served for the government and the central banks. And especially one thing is like money is fundamental, like to pay people, you have to have a roof over your head, you have to have food, clothing, shelter. But then schools are talking about like the Pythagorean theorem and like all these like very esoteric concepts. And what sort of pushback have you gotten from, this educational, infrastructure and all of that?
It's sort of a bifurcation for a lot of people in education, business and finance and money is just not a thing. They weren't taught that when they went through the system. And, if maybe you're a principal and you've gotten along just fine, not really having studied it. And so maybe you're just ambivalent about it. You say, okay, whatever, and not interested. But on the other hand, then our customers are schools and principals that are really ambitious for their kids. And they take this really wide view that we want our kids to know everything. We want them to be prepared for everything. And so there's like an entrepreneurship wave that's moving through education now. And so in many cases, we're really welcomed with open arms. In those cases, it's very gratifying. And also there's an even larger movement in the U.S. to relook at civics education and kind of back away from maybe some of the more soft, woke sort of issues and get back to some stuff with more meat in it. And if you really want to understand American government and American philosophy and the Constitution and all these things, economics is essential. Our founders understood it 100%. There's this unbreakable link between personal liberty, owning yourself, and owning your possessions, and free market economics. I mean, free market economics is what happens. A marketplace is people who bring the stuff they own and freely exchange them with other people. It's the only way that market prices can form. And without market prices, you're just completely blind. Nobody knows what to do. You can't figure out how to run a business, how to finance a business. Prices are just essential. And in order to have prices, you have to have private property. There's no substitute. What we see a lot of times is, in the extreme cases, the early days of the Russian Revolution, they actually completely outlawed money in certain areas. And in less than a year, people were literally starving. There was nothing there. And, in North Korea, where prices are suppressed, and then there you have just utter poverty. And then in the middle, you can play games with the prices. You can put on regulations and this and that, and sort of hide the damage you do. But the damage is always there. It just may take longer to show up, or you may be able to explain it away as something else. But it's just a mathematical certainty. There's no way around it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the United States is kind of the best of the worst. Kind of, I've all basically currencies, the fiat currencies, they'll eventually go to zero. But these overwhelming, public debt, and starting wars, and wasting a lot of money on different things and not really focusing on infrastructure, educating your system and your population. Again, I love this idea of free market. It's, the free market of ideas. To a certain extent, it exists here. There is some, bias and some censorship, but, it's the best of the worst lot is how I, how I view it.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I put a lot of that at the feet of the Keynesian. We've propagated so many really fallacy. War is good for the economy. That's an old Keynesian, which on the face of it, I mean, you go to work and you produce bombs and you go destroy something that somebody else has produced, and somehow that's good for somebody's economy. I mean, it might be good for Raytheon's economy, but for the economy overall, it's certainly not. This goes back to all of us learned economics. You can't open an economics textbook finding the circular flow diagram within the first few pages of the book. And we've all been taught that this is what an economy looks like. That was built specifically to prop up Keynesianism. When Keynes wrote the general theory, nobody could understand it. It's a mess. Just try to read it. It'll give you a headache because he changes the definition of words, halfway through a page, and it's a mess. And the circular flow diagram is one of the things that they built to try to prop it up. And we have a video coming out on why it's such a problem and deconstructing it and putting things back in the right place. It's almost a phenomenal brainwashing. We all accept that this must be it because we all learned it in our textbooks. But it treats capital. Well, it does two things with capital. One, it treats it like it's the same as labor or raw materials. It's just a factor of production and it's just part of this little circle. That's one thing that they do wrong. But also notice, in the first chapter of the book, they say, okay, the factors of production are land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. And then you never hear anything about capital anymore. There's no discussion of what is capital, where does it come from, what do you do to be friendly to it, et cetera, because those questions don't fit the math of economics the way they want to do it.
Yeah.
Sorry for that long ramble, but
yeah,
it's a pet peeve. All of these things, the Federal Reserve, wars, deficit spending, those are all supported by Keynesian notions that fall apart with just a little bit of introspection.
Yeah. And I love how you're getting kids exposed to these ideas because the problem with fiat currency is it's basically, I was reading, there was a really great quote is whoever controls the money supply is one of the most powerful people, more powerful than the president. So you look at Jerome Powell, more powerful than Biden because he controls the cost of the money and he sets the interest rates. All economic activity based on the US dollar as the reserve currency, that's a huge, in one person, and you have people like talking like hours and hours analyzing what he's saying and his comments, and it's like just like that's not a
yes, and like we said earlier, if you don't have a market price for something, then you can't make a rational decision. And interest is the price of money. It's one of the most important prices in the marketplace. David Stockman is constantly saying that. And it's the cause of the boom and bust cycle. It's the cause of inflation. It looks very complicated when you look at the banking system, but at its root, if you can just print money for free, that's the greatest business in the world. And who can resist it? Even if the first guy who's involved is an angel, sooner or later, someone a little less angelic is going to get control, and then that's it, right? You've got the fox guarding the hen house.
Yeah, it's amazing how fragile our economic system is. Really, like especially in March of 2020, just the extent, in the magnitude, in the rapidity of the bank runs, I'm surprised it was so overlooked in the mainstream media and by the news. Just kind of glossed over, and they kind of like patched it up. People are awaking to this idea where it's an unstable system. One of the questions I have is, because one of the technological solutions to unsound money is Bitcoin, and I think it's been demonized by the media because so many criminals and bad actors have used it, and they're trying to, basically demonize it, trying to, associate it with that. But just talking about sound money, and when I read the Bitcoin white paper in 2011, it was just like this big aha to fix all the problems with centralized fiat money, just this greed on Wall Street, the corruption in DC. So what role do you talk about educate children around Bitcoin, sound money, sound concepts? Again, gets a bad rap, but we can talk about that as well.
Yeah, so we don't have any specific stuff in our curriculum regarding Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency. We have like a 35-hour course. In 35 hours, we're covering all the fundamentals of business economics and entrepreneurship. And so we do talk about money per se. What is money like? Where did it come from? How did it evolve? I've been late personally to the Bitcoin game. Only recently have I become a big fan. My thinking has always been, well, what's to stop somebody from making a better Bitcoin and making the first one obsolete? Number one. And number two, who really understands all the code underlying Bitcoin, and how are you sure that there's not some glitches or something in there? But I recently read a white paper by a couple of guys at Fidelity Investments, and they answered those questions for me very well. Yeah. And so I'm totally on board now with Bitcoin and put in, some percentage of my assets that direction. I think it's too big of a topic to address with our kids. We just don't have the time for that. We have so many things on the drawing board. We want to add stuff about contracts and insurance and show how these things work. So I mean, maybe there's a crypto lesson out there somewhere in the future, but for right now, we don't have it.
Yeah, but go ahead. Sorry.
And I guess what I should also say is, when we're teaching kids, we're very careful to stay on the dead facts, things that are essentially incontrovertible. I think it's criminal to mislead a child, and so we don't. Even though my own feelings are very, very free market, I'm careful to call that out with them. And, we say, look, here's the mechanism, here's the linkage, how you get from here to there. Examine that linkage, decide for yourself if it all works. And for God's sakes, don't believe me just because I said it. When the crux of critical thinking is that every step has to make sense in your own brain. And if it doesn't, you just set aside accepting it until that does. So we're very, very careful not to propagandize kids. I think when they know the facts, they make the right decision, and we see that time and time again. But I'm extremely careful to point out my personal biases and warn them not to fall prey to them.
Yeah, I love that. And so kind of as we come to the end of this really fascinating discussion around financial literacy, economics, educating our kids, sounds like you're doing a lot of great work. And I'm curious, how can people contact you, check out your work, reach out to you, etc.?
You can just go to middleschoolmba.com. That's as in Masters of Business Administration, middleschoolmba.com, and just right there on our homepage, there's tons of information, testimonials. You can download the curriculum outline. There's sample lessons, or free lessons. If you have a school or just homeschool, everybody teaches scarcity and supply and demand. You can get those lessons free on our website, and they're the best thing on the market. You might as well use the best. So just middle school. If you want to contact me, you can through the website there, through our Connect page, and be happy to help your listeners however we can.
Yeah, and I love this. I love this. People coming out of the public and doing great work, such as yourself. Others really democratizing, kind of getting equal access to education and information, which we would not be able to do without the internet and just all this technology.
Yeah, while we're at it, I might mention we have a interesting project in Africa with University of Buckingham. We're taking best curriculum there is and making it available at very, very low cost to schools that don't even have power. They might have a roof, but they don't have a floor. These are the poorest kids in the world. And because of technology, we're able to get projectors, battery-powered projectors out of China for $20. FO equip these classrooms with these just great curriculum that would seem unimaginable. And one day, once we have it working with economics, the idea is that we use the same platform for history and math and whatever. You find who's the best math teacher in the world, and we plug them into this platform. And the results, when all these, we're talking about over 1 million kids at this point, and there are many, many more, of course, in Asia and Africa. And the wealth and the knowledge that kind of thing can release over the next 10, 20, 30 years is just incredible.
Yeah. And I love this. We'll have to have you on as in the future, for future another webinar or podcast, and all of John's resources will be in the links and show notes. And I love the work that you're doing, empowering people around financial literacy. And with that, thanks so much for coming on to the podcast.
Thank you.